Good morning. My name is Tom Kellum, archivist with the Tarrant County College District. It's Thursday, June the 2nd, 2011. We're here this morning with C.A. Robertson, one of the second chancellor of the college and a long time with a long association with Tarrant County College. And we appreciate your being here. And we will start this morning with a little bit about yourself. So tell us, if you will, a little bit about your background, including your birthplace, education, family background, and so on, your childhood, so on.
All right. I'm a native of West Texas. I was born in a farmhouse near San Angelo in Tom Green County. It was about the beginning of the Depression, the time of my birth. I guess as a teenager I lived through the Depression and the Dust Bowl days. My family was in a small town named Very Best that had a large general store, and that was my dad's operation. And we sold just about anything anybody would ever need in that general merchandise store. So I grew up in a rural area, really watching farmers work hard and struggle to make it through a very difficult time. I went to high school in San Angelo and graduated from San Angelo High School in 1946. At that time, there was San Angelo College, very good, I guess, and very highly thought of a community college in community college, or in those days junior college circles around the nation. And so I decided, well, this is my opportunity to get a little education. So I'll go to the junior college for 2 years. I went 2 years and I thought, I believe I can do this. I've accumulated about 60 plus hours, and that's about halfway through. I think I'll find a place and move on. By that time I decided to major in business and accounting primarily. So I transferred to Texas Tech, received my bachelor's degree there. And in my last semester, the head of the accounting department approached me and said, "C.A., you're a single guy and don't have anything that you have to do other than just go to work, and you can put off your job with a CPA firm another year or two and come on and get your master's degree with us, and we'll give you a teaching fellow job." So for the magnificent sum of $55 a month, I taught a couple of classes, took a few classes, and after a year or so, I had received my master's degree, or was in the process of receiving my master's degree. My plans at that time were always to become a CPA, and I had approaches from large accounting firms to go to work. One of them was Arthur Anderson in Houston. I wasn't too thrilled with the idea of going to Houston to start my career, but at that time that was their only office in Texas. So I went home at the end of the spring semester. It was going to take me 6 weeks in the summer to finish my master's degree. And while I was home for a few days there, my dad was going to a function in San Angelo that was an annual function of businessmen, big barbecue and get together of the people in San Angelo, business people in San Angelo. And I was there and visiting with some friends, and a man said, there's a man named Brian Wildenthal here that you don't know. He came to San Angelo College as president after you left, but he's been here for a year and he wants to talk to you. And I said, well, fine, I'll be glad to visit with him. And so he got the two of us together. And about all Dr. Wildenthal said was, could you come by the office, college in the morning, and visit with me? And I said, well, I can. It'll have to be pretty early. I have to go back to tech, and I'm helping with registration. That's when you're student assistant or teaching assistant, you got jobs like that. And he said, it won't take long, come on by. So I went in, sat down in his office, and he looked across and said, CA, I want to make you business manager of San Angelo College. And I said, well, Dr. Wildenthal, I don't know anything about being business manager. I had no plans to be in education or to work in education. And he said, well, I need a business manager. And back down the line, I was a business manager. And you can do the job, and I'd like to offer you the job and have you come here. And I said, well, now you have to think about this. I said, just 3 years ago, I was a student here, and not a very good student at that. And all these faculty members I'm going to be working with, they're going to remember that lousy student. And he said, that'll work out. You don't need to worry about that. So I thought, well, going to pay me more than that job was with Arthur Anderson. I'll just do this. So that's how I got into the field of education. A life story up to that time, and how I started in higher education, and it was 45 years later before I found a place to retire or leave.
As a child, who were your heroes growing up?
Well, I loved baseball, and I guess one of my real heroes was Lou Gehrig. And the thing I liked about Lou Gehrig was that maybe he wasn't that great of a talent, but he showed up every day. He played every day. He worked harder than most other people did. And it sold me on the idea that you had to be consistent and you had to work hard with whatever you did. So I guess, as growing up, if you had an idol, Lou Gehrig was sort of my idol. And I tried to pattern my life all the way through my work is that you had to be there every day, and you had to work hard.
So you really picked up a work ethic.
I think so. I think so. And of course, back during those days too, it was such a struggle for everybody. Everybody had a pretty good work ethic, or you didn't survive.
Sink or swim. Describe the factors that influenced your career choice. What drew you to the business world? You said you became a business major.
Well,
business and accounting. What was it?
Well, my dad was in business, and as a child, he'd always allow me to go along, whether he was going to the bank to talk about a loan, or going to a distributor where he was going to buy something or make a deal on some product or that he was going to sell or something. I was always allowed to go along. And I watched him, and I guess I just really wasn't exposed to other trades, for example, engineering or medicine or those fields. I just didn't have the exposure there that I did to business. Now, the other exposure I had, of course, was to agriculture. But early on, I decided I didn't want to do much that had to do with whether it rained or not.
So it was your family, your experience with your father that the business world appealed to you.
Yes, yes.
When you came to TCJC, compare and contrast the environment of TCJC that existed when you first came here and when you first became chancellor to the the community college environment of today? How has it changed over the years? How has it stayed the same?
Well, let me back up just a little if I can and expand on that. Is that all right?
That's fine.
I look back, let's take San Angelo College, and that was in 1951. At that time, you had excellent academic programs in the community colleges. And people were going for a 2-year academic program, basically, and then transferring to a senior institution. There was virtually no occupational programs or trade programs or anything. They were really 2-year liberal arts institutions. And the community colleges that were in the state at that time, and there weren't nearly the number that there are today, but they were institutions that were just sort of miniature 4-year institutions. They had football teams, they had athletics, they had dormitories. You can look at Tyler and Kilgore and some of those that are still doing those things today. So that was the type of community college you had in that day. And I would say this, they were all that I know anything about, very good academic institutions. People didn't have any trouble if they finished there going on to the University of Texas or Tech or anywhere and succeeding, if they succeeded. So that was a change, and I spent 15 years in higher education before I came to Tarrant County College. When I came to Tarrant County College in 1966, when there were just 4 or 5 of us here, and we were planning to build a campus and open in a year or so, the big change I saw right then was that we were looking at a much broader course offering. You were looking at occupational programs. You were looking at short courses, things like police academies, EMT training, as well as academic programs. And you were looking at institutions that were going to be commuters. You didn't have dorms, you didn't have athletic programs for the most part. So it was different from the institutions that I had been familiar with. But I don't think between that time and 30 years later, even after I'd been chancellor and left, that our philosophy at the college of what we wanted to do and how we wanted to help people really changed that much. We were still, I think we had maybe the students we were receiving weren't quite as well equipped as the ones that we got in the early years. I think they were better equipped then than they were down the line. But you have to remember our average age of students, and I assume it's still about the same, is about 26, 27 years of age. So you're not getting a lot of people that are just right out of high school. You're getting a broad range of people. And somewhere along the line, I remember one time we were having a bond election or something. I received a letter from a fella and said, just wanted to tell you how great your refrigeration and air conditioning program is. It's a wonderful program, and anything I can do to help you get your message across, I'll be glad to do it. It was great for me. So I passed this on to someone. I said, look this guy up, let's see. Well, we looked, and he had taken several courses in refrigeration and air conditioning and failed all of them. Every one of them had an F. So they gave him a call and said, what's the deal here? And he said, I didn't care about the degree. He said, I own a bunch of apartments. I can get anybody to fix the air conditioning. I wanted to learn how to fix the air conditioning. And you people taught me how. I'm happy. So, see, that's greatly different from the young person right out of high school that wants to pick 30 or 40 or 50 hours here and transfer to a senior institution. So I think you have more and more of that today, is my observation, than you did in the early days. And to me, that's a big change, that the people maybe look at it a little differently. And you know, you can see an article in the newspaper all the time now that what's the value of a college education, or is it worth it? Well, I think it is, and it's extremely valuable to the people, not just in what you're going to learn and how it's going to apply to you in the business you're in or help you make a dollar. It's also in the quality of your life and the different things that you're going to know and get out of, whether it's the arts or developing an interest in any other subject that you might have. I think that's really important, and that's a good part of education. Digress just a little bit more. One institution, one of the better community colleges in the state, a few years ago just announced that they weren't going to teach drama anymore. They were ceasing teaching drama because it wasn't profitable for them. Well, to me, if you're going to have an educational institution, you're going to have the fine arts, and you're going to have music and drama, and you're going to have a well-rounded institution. And I hate to see that some of the institutions are cutting back and doing away with some programs that I think are a part of a well-rounded education.
Well, that sort of segues well into our next question, but before we move on I would like to see you expand on that somewhat, but I would also like for you to talk briefly or for a moment about what it was like opening an institution, because you told me earlier that you had been here pretty much from the beginning.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that kind of adventurous.
Okay. Well, adventurous is a good word, maybe. I had been in community college for 15 years and came here from Odessa College. Dr. Rushing contacted me and said, you know, would you like to come down and help me start this institution? And I thought, well, you know, this is an opportunity to set things up the way we want them, and if we make a mess of it, it's us doing it. I don't have to straighten out somebody else's mess. We're going to start from ground zero. So I came in on May the 1st of 1966. Worked here 30 years. And at that time, we were working night and day with the architects on the South Campus. Dr. Rushing had already started with them back 2 or 3 months earlier. But we were beginning to get lines on paper now, and beginning to get some estimates of what we were going to spend and what it was going to take. We were going to build a 400,000 square foot campus, which is a pretty big campus. We hoped to go to bid in the summer, July, start construction in August or September, and move in 12 months later in the fall of 1967 and open. Now that was the approach of this board at Tarrant County College, which I think was the right approach. Dallas, 30 miles away, had decided to take a different approach. They bought an old department store and were renovating it, and were going to open in that a year earlier, which they did. But not only could you didn't just throw open a campus, you had to think about the cycle of getting legislative appropriation and the idea of getting the appropriation, or the legislature, to appropriate money based on an anticipated enrollment, because they'd always based your appropriation on actual enrollment the year before. Now we could spend an hour, and I have with some of the state people, about how you funded community college and where we changed. I'll just say this, the basic thing that we had to do was convince them that they had to fund occupational programs. Because when you look at occupational programs, all the various occupational programs, you might or might not have semester hours attached. And they were basing all of the appropriation at that time based on full-time equivalent students on enrollment on a certain day. That meant if you couldn't have many semesters, you couldn't have short courses that you could count on getting appropriation for. There was some federal funds available, but it was based on whatever they might have in the pot and how you could divvy it up among all the colleges. So you just couldn't have occupational programs the way we wanted to. So one of the big problems was to leap in with the legislature right quick. And by 1970, which seems like a long time, but that was about 3 years into operation for us, we had changed the whole structure of funding community colleges in this state. And we were able to get the state to fund all the community colleges based on a contact hour system and total those up for the total year's enrollment rather than just so much for a semester or 3 semester hour course and full-time equivalents. So we were able to get them on a funding basis for year-round funding and for occupational as well as academic. Now, if you think about that, that was a tremendous achievement to get that done and get that through the legislature because it changed the entire pattern of funding and enabled comprehensive community colleges. If you didn't have that, you could not have comprehensive community colleges in this state. And so I'm glad that we took the lead on that and got that accomplished. But you also had to sell a lot of the community colleges on that because you had some community colleges that didn't want to fool with it. They wanted to teach a few academic courses, base it on their fall enrollment, teach it with part-time people, have a few full-timers in the spring, and didn't care whether anybody came or not and shut down for the summer. So if you take a picture of that as community colleges and a picture of where community colleges are today, that to me is the biggest change in the whole structure. And with Dallas coming on board and Tarrant County and others in those years right in there, that really changed things. But we were trying to plan those campuses. You were trying to hire a staff, hire a faculty, get geared up to open, put together policies and procedures, manuals, how you were going to do things, everything that you can think of that a college would need. And I remember in those early years working with a purchasing agent I employed from another educational institution, college. On that south campus, we've had to make a list of every piece of equipment, every piece of furniture that we wanted. That involved sitting down with the plans. When the plans were finally out to bid and we knew what we were going to build in about September and October, you were developing all of this to bring in everything that you're going to need, from microscopes to biology to clarinets for the band, to you name it. And your every pot and pan for the dining hall, everything you had to have. And then not only did we decide what we needed, then we had to decide specifications on it, what quality we wanted to buy, and put all that stuff out to bid it, and get it delivered on the time that we were opening the buildings. So that was a busy time. You can imagine how busy we were in doing that. There was no such, Lou Gehrig would have been happy that day because we were all working night and day. And now while we were doing that, and then when we opened that campus, we were already out to bid on the Northeast campus. And we were turning around and doing the same set of things to open the Northeast campus the year later. So that was an exciting, awesome time, and to get that done and get it put together.
So you essentially changed the way the community college system was operated, not just for Tarrant County,
That's
but
right.
for the state. So
For the
what we
state,
have
yeah.
today reflects decisions
That we made, right? Yeah, yeah. That what had to be done, and I was interviewed 2 or 3 times by the Junior College Association and by the University of Texas, going back to how we came, how we did this. But I had friends that I had worked with there that I knew, and I knew that we had to get the Legislative Budget Board and the Governor's Budget Office and all those people on board, because if we didn't, we were never going to sell it. And I think one of my big days of my life was when we were in Austin and had been working on this, and a guy named Hermas Miller that worked the Legislative Budget Board picked up the phone and called Senator Aiken, who was the chairman of the Finance Committee in the Senate and a big supporter of community colleges, and say, Senator Aiken, we want to go with this contact hour funding system, and we sign off on it, and that's okay. And his reply was, okay, let's do it. And that was a tremendous change in the way colleges were funding.
That's quite a legacy. Well, let's move on to you. Earlier, we talked somewhat about your vision of education and what that entailed. Is a little more than just a way to go out and make money, but something that addressed the whole person. So our next question is, if a young person asked you today about the importance of attending college, how would you respond? I think you sort of alluded to that earlier.
Well, I think Dr. Rushing came up with a slogan or something where, about improving the quality of your life. And we don't want to we want to give you a better life, better experiences, that you'll come away, and not just to know how to make money, but how to help you live and enjoy life, and enjoy some of the other things around you, the arts and so forth. And some people are going to come for that purpose. There's going to be other people that are going to come, and I think more and more so now, just for the pure purpose of getting the skills they need to get a job, to make money, to make a living. And that's fine if that's what they want. And a lot of people do that, and I think education provides that. But I can't understand people not wanting an education. I guess I'm so wrapped up in education over the years that it's hard for me to see why someone would think education is not valuable to them. I remember a man, C.C. Calvert, been dead many years, but early on, back in the 20s and 30s, an advocate of community colleges. And he tells about the time when he was president during the Depression. And one guy came to him and said, that little old community junior college you have out there. I said, no good. Said, you've got graduates that are working down the 5 and 10 cent store. Got a job and they're working clerking down there. And he said, yeah, but they have a job, and those that don't have a education don't have any jobs now. They're in the bread lines during Depression. So you're gonna be better off with an education. Every statistic in the world shows you're gonna make more money. If that's valuable to you, you're gonna have more money. You're gonna have more resources with the more education you have. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to get out there and get an education and make a fortune. Many are not. but or very few are going to make a fortune. But I think you're going to be better equipped for life in general, and you're going to be better equipped to understand what's happening in the community, what happens if you even as you work with the Chamber of Commerce or other groups in your community with education. You're going to know more. You're going to understand what's taking place in Austin and in Washington. You're just going to have a better grasp of what's going on in life.
So
with an education. It's a lot broader than just getting a skill to make a living.
education prepares you for being a citizen.
Right.
Right. If you haven't had an opportunity to invite anyone, living or dead, to a dinner party, who would you invite? Why, and what would be on the menu?
Oh, that's a hard one. A lot of people you'd like to talk to, and a lot of people you'd like to visit with. I have a hard time answering that question. I don't really not really come up with a one person that would stand out more than any other. I had a lot of good friends along the way that have passed on, and you'd like to talk to them again and see how they feel about things. One of the great men of this institution was Jenkins Garrett, who was the original chairman of the board, and the guidance that he gave to this college, and the ethics that he gave us, and his grasp of what the community wanted and what the community needed, and how we could go about providing that through the community college. And the original board here, I guess if I could sit down with the original group of people, rather than one person, I'd like to sit down with that original board that was here, because you had people like Ed Hudson and May Owen and people that they had no ulterior motives for themselves. They weren't out to gain anything. They just wanted a fine community college. And you got the impression, Joe Rushing and I both did, that we wanted to please that board, because it wasn't that we were afraid of our jobs or anything else. We knew how much they had put their necks out on the line to get the college here and get it created, they were just outstanding people.
It's interesting. Dr. Rushing gave a very similar account of that
Right.
early board, and made remarks very similar to yours about what it was
Right.
like working with those.
Yeah,
folks.
they were.
And mentioned Mr. Garrett.
Yes.
Specifically, he was a remarkable man.
Yeah. But I have a hard time answering that one for you, to pick one person. One of my political heroes, if you wanted to get into the politics, is Harry Truman. I think Harry Truman had to make some great decisions that he made, and the thing I liked about him was when it was over, he got in his car and drove back home, and he was through. He had done his service. And you don't see people whether they're in Washington or wherever they are now that do their job and then go back and say, that's it.
Yes. Truman was, yes, that's true. It's a different era. Let's talk about a minute about your legacy. I think going back to your discussion of the way you transformed you and Dr. Rushing and the others transformed how junior college or community colleges work throughout the state of Texas. That sounds like you look at that as the primary part of your legacy. So is that how you would like to be remembered? Is that a major?
I think so. I think that's one of the things that we'd like. I think we all want to help people. We really wanted to help people. It wasn't just a matter of getting numbers through the college, and not just here, but I think I'd like to be remembered as somebody that enjoyed their work. To me, every employee here at the college was important. I don't care whether it was the custodian or the boiler operator or the police officer or the campus president or the dean, whoever. Or as chancellor, as far as I was concerned, we all had jobs. And we all had jobs to do, and theirs were just as important as mine. There wasn't anything different about that. And one thing that we wanted too, and I'm sure Dr. Rushing mentioned this, but in the early days we were talking about placing of occupational programs. And we wanted those programs placed around the campus in buildings that were just as fine and just as well integrated in all over the campus with academic programs. So that the people that were doing occupational programs in those days, one Del Mar, they had a separate campus. So all occupational programs you were over at this campus. If you wanted to be academic, you went to the main campus. And a lot of, you were just kind of second-class citizen. And we wanted to be sure that we had one student center, that everybody came over and drank coffee at the same place. We didn't want to develop a little coffee shop over in the occupational building that those people would go to and not come over and associate with academics. We want them all together. We want the faculty all together, so that the person teaching aerospace technology and the person teaching English work together. And part in doing this, we established a joint consultation committee that we called. I'm not sure what it's called today. But we had 2 representatives, faculty representatives, from each campus that met with the chancellor. We met once a month just to see what the faculty was thinking about. And I never thought, while I was sitting with those, at that time we had 3 in the last 4 campuses, but sitting with those people, I never thought about this guy's occupational or this guy's a history teacher or what. They were just faculty members. And I think that the idea that all jobs are honorable and that they have their place and all is something that Dr. Rushing and I had the same philosophy on. You talk about when I started as chancellor in let's see, 89. People probably didn't notice a great change because Dr. Rushing and I had worked together for 22 years at that time. And we pretty well had the same philosophy of how things ought to work. And they didn't see a big change, I'm sure. Now, I operated differently than he did, but we wanted the same outcome, the same thing. I believed I had an open door policy. If anybody who was there and walked in and wanted to see me, they could see me. They didn't have to have an appointment. Now, if they wanted to be sure I was going to be there or be sure I wasn't in another meeting, they could call. But if some faculty member was just there and happened to stroll in and want to visit, they could. And they called on the phone, they might get me. So I picked it up on one icy morning, and one lady said, "I want to know who's the idiot that decided to have classes today." I said, "You got him."
So you and Dr. Rushing and the others from the beginning had a vision of what you wanted the institution
That's
to look
right.
like.
That's right.
That's pretty much what it became. It sounds like what it still is.
I think so. Of course, after I retired, I kept an office on this campus for about 3 years, but I phased it out, and even when I was here, I went in the back way and out, and I never was interested in trying to impose myself on anything. I had done my thing, I was through, and I was gone. And Dr. Rushing was the same way. After he retired, I said, "What are you going to do?" And he said, "Well," I said, "Got an office for you downstairs here at the Mayo Center." And he said, "Well," "I don't want to take up an office down here. I might get in your way." I said, "Come on." I said, "You need a place to go and drink coffee and all, and if you become a problem, I'll tell you and you can leave." And so that's the kind of relationship we had, and it was great.
Well, when you were starting the college, that was in the late '60s, which was a time of huge social change in this country.
Right.
And that must have been a factor in the early years of the college. The civil rights movement
Right.
was in full swing, the war in Vietnam, all of these social changes
Right.
were hitting just every day. How did that affect the early years of the college?
Well, I think of course, first of all, we were always integrated. So there was no segregation ever in the college. And we had some unrest, not over racial issues, but maybe just over college policies, and the fact that at that time there was just unrest from the Vietnam War and so forth on all the campuses. We only had really one incident on the South Campus back in those early years, and it was involved a few people that primarily were from UT Arlington that decided they couldn't create enough problems over there, so they'd come over and help us. And we really didn't have a problem on that. We didn't have a faculty problem. We had administrators and students of all races, and it just never did really seem to be a problem here. I go way back when I was at San Angelo College in 1953. I was involved there in helping integrate that college. And if you think in 1953 in West Texas, we pulled that off with no problems. People wouldn't think that you could, but we did, and it worked fine. I think just let people know what's going to happen, and you're going to treat everybody fairly, and everything's going to be above board. You're not going to have any problem with that. One of the big things here that helped us not have any problems was Reverend L.L. Haynes, who was an African American minister here and on the original board, and he had been through it all. But brilliant man and a good community leader. He was respected in the entire community, in the entire city of Fort Worth. And he was a big help. I think he showed everybody that if this is the type of person we're going to have on the board, then they're going to be happy.
Sounds like your approach to kind of defining the culture of the college was you took the context of the times into account and kind of
I think so.
Looked around and knew
Right.
what was going on and said, let's address these things before
before they become problems.
That's the impression I got from when we talked to Dr. Rushing.
Yeah, and again, I think that goes back to the original board.
Yes, he mentioned Reverend Haynes. I'm going to have to do some research on him, but yes,
Yeah,
he mentioned that too.
Yeah, Reverend Haynes was a great man, and he was not the type person that was going to be walking down the middle of the street protesting something, but he, in his quiet way, was letting you know that he expected everything run legal and above board, and he was a great man.
Well, thank you, Mr. Robertson. That's pretty much it for me. If my colleagues have any questions,
Were you here when, were you part of opening up the Southeast campus?
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about, because Dr. Rushing talked about opening up the other three campuses.
Right, he was gone by then.
I knew about that time you were
Yeah,
opening
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Could you address opening up the campus and the logic and where it was? And
Okay.
just
Yeah,
the
that
problems
sure.
may have
Yeah.
been opening.
Yeah, that one was interesting.
And, just
That
include anything else you talked.
the Southeast campus was really interesting in that we originally, the original plan was that we would have a campus in each quadrant and that there would be a campus in the Benbrook area. But that area just didn't develop as fast. And in looking at where our students were coming from and the student population, it appeared that we were serving that southwest section pretty well on the South Campus because it was so near the South Freeway. It was really not in Southeast. And we had all the growth in Arlington, and we felt that we needed a campus in Arlington. We probably waited a little late because when you started out to buy 150 acres, it was kind of hard to do. We had the money included in that for that campus in a previous bond election. And incidentally, bond election's another story, but they all carried well. The last bond election, as I were here, it was a $70 million bond election, which was big at that time. And we had 70% favorable vote on it. And the construction of the campus was in that. But we had the money to buy a site in Arlington. And I started looking. I talked to the Chamber of Commerce there and some of the public school people and so forth to find a location. And a man came to me and said, I understand you're looking, and offered me that site, realtors. And I went out and looked at them and I said, it's just so far out here and all, I just don't think this is what we want. I want something up near the center of Arlington, and it's a long ways down here, and I just don't think that's it. And so the Arlington Chamber of Commerce and school superintendent, some of the people from Arlington at that time, said, come out and have lunch with us. So I went out, and we had a real good relationship with the people in Arlington, and they said, we think you ought to look at that site again. So I went back out, and the city explained what was going to happen and how the city was going to grow in that direction and what was happening down at Mansfield and how that whole area was going to grow and that there just weren't many big tracts of land. I looked at a junior high school that's right off of Interstate 20, the north side there. I can't think of the name of it. I looked at it 2 or 3 times. The public schools was offering to sell us that building, but I couldn't see that we had enough land there, and it was, it was a high school. We would have to had tremendous renovation there that would have been pretty costly, and then a lot of other buildings, and it just didn't fit. There was some talk about getting the old mall that's out there off of, south of the Six Flags Mall. I can't think of the name of the one was down there though, where originally Leonard's was, and then Dillard's outlet store and so forth. That didn't work. So we got thinking, well, we'll look at this site a little more. And I went to talk to a fellow in Dallas, a developer that had title to it, I thought. And he was one of these fellows with his shirt unbuttoned and a gold chain hanging around his neck and a wheeler dealer. And right in the middle of the conversation about us buying it, he said, well, I'm sorry, I got another appointment, just got up and left. And I thought, well, this guy isn't very interested in selling this or selling it to us. But we went on and pursued it a little more. And in that meeting, I found that a bank in Austin really was the lead, the outfit that had loaned the greatest amount of money on that. So the next time I was in Austin, I just went by and started talking to the fellow there about buying that. And he didn't seem very interested in talking to me and all. But it did have the 150 acres, and everything looked good in the city. Said, this is the one you ought to buy and everything. I was talking to him, and he finally said, well, how are you going to finance this? And I said, well, we have the money in the bank. And you've never seen such a conversation turn. They were immediately, I was the most important guy in their lives. They had found somebody that could buy that tract of land. We wound up buying it at the price we wanted. The problem we had, when we got ready to close and give them their money, they had borrowed more money, far more money on it than it was worth. And there were about 8 banks, some of them even in Canada, that were not going to get their full 100%. And they were arguing about who was going to get how much money. And it literally took them about a month to decide before we could close and buy that property. And I think we made a basic mistake. We decided to go on that construction with a construction supervisor or foreman to hire a firm to manage it, rather than take a bid with one general contractor. And as a result, we were dealing with this company and taking many bids like electrical and plumbing and structural and all of this. And this company that we were dealing with, that we had selected to be the management firm, sold out about 6 months into the job. And another company came in, and they weren't as good as the first company. And we had all sorts of trouble keeping all of those people, all of those subcontractors organized and moving. So of all the campuses that we built, it was the hardest to build. It was the hardest to build. We had the contractor on the South Campus, turned out to be the same contractor that built the Northeast Campus. And it was one general contract, and we were able to really, get their attention and keep after it. And there's no way you could go and build a campus like we built at South in 12 months and open it. You can't do it anymore. I don't know why, but you can't do it. But that contractor really put the effort in, and we had big liquidating damages. If they didn't get it done by a certain date, then they had to pay so much a day, and they came through. We got in. We actually moved in the first buildings about 10 months after they started construction on the South. Now, if you were around were you here when we were getting into the Northwest and to the Southeast?
Was I here?
Yeah. Well, it was a problem. It was a real problem because we didn't have part of the building, and it was a struggle. But we made it. But that's opening a campus and getting a faculty together and all of those things is very, very difficult to do.
When you opened that Arlington campus, Were there tensions with the University of Texas at Arlington over the idea of having
No, not really. Not really. The administration changed at University of Texas at Arlington. The man that was there when we started and all was one of our biggest supporters and all. We had one president come in out there that really didn't care much whether we existed or not. But basically, we've had good relations with them. We feed a lot of students to them, and I don't think we've had a problem. Back, Dr. Rushing may have mentioned this, TCU had great reservations about us in 1967.
He did mention.
They had great reservations about us because they thought we would really kill them. And as it turned out, over the years, we became very good friends, very good relationship with them. But you know, and again, that's just the things that you have to deal with. Now, I was not involved in the downtown decision here. Back in the early days, Dallas went with the downtown campus. Our board, the original board, and Dr. Rushing, really did not want a downtown campus at that time. We thought that we needed suburban campuses, and that's the way we went. And from time to time, we tried to offer some courses downtown, but not with a great deal of success.
Your tenure was from about 89 to 96?
Yeah, from 8 years there, from 80.
Could you talk about some of the changes that you saw take place during that time, from the time you started until the end, as far as accomplishments that happened, and some of the successes that happened within the college during your tenure?
Well, of course, we expanded all the 3 existing campuses. There was additional construction on all those, enlargement, and there was also the construction of the Southeast campus. We also went through a very thorough and complete self-study for the Southern Association and renewed our full accreditation, which is a big achievement and a lot of work involving a lot of faculty and so forth. When you just really, it's really just taking the lid off the place and taking a look at yourself and seeing how you're doing and what changes you need to make. I think I moved more to closer relationship with the faculty than maybe Dr. Rushing did. I felt I had a good relationship with the faculty, that we had a very good faculty. In the latter years, we began to, starting in 1985, the state began to get into the financial squeeze. And you got harder and harder and harder, year by year, to get the funding from the state that you needed. The money just wasn't there. And that's been a problem, and it is a problem now. Now, we had a board, the board that I worked with was not interested in raising taxes. Shortly after I left, within a couple of years, they did get to the point where they just had to raise taxes. But we did not, I'd say in the final 2 years, we didn't have the money that I'd like to have had. Now, we always were very competitive on salaries with faculty and at our institution and other institutions and other salaries, but it's a real financial problem for the state. I don't know whether I covered what you had in mind there or not.
We've got about 4 minutes on this tape.
Can you define, like, what is the finest, your most proudest achievement that Tarrant County College during your tenure has given to the community, to the citizenry?
I don't know if you picked one thing.
Might be a harder question than the first one.
I think one question. I think one thing is just getting the campus, getting the district open, and getting the first campuses started. One, and if you just talk about my personal achievement, after I retired, some publicity went out on it, and I received a letter from a young man, and he said, "I'm sure you remember me," and he gave me his name and all, and I'd remembered that he and his wife had gotten married while he was in college there, and I kept up with him to some extent. But he said, "I just want you to know as you retire that I'd never have anything in this life like I have if it hadn't been for you to see that I got the things I needed and that it made me get the education that I have." I knew that he had finished college and went on and got a master's degree, and I kept pushing him along, and every time I'd see him, he'd push him. And his final remark was, "Well, thank you very much, and when you're in London, come see me. I'm now president of Conoco Europe." So you get back to your question, is education worth anything? That's a good example. And I go back to a lot of people like Elva Alley here. I pulled Elva out of a classroom and said, "Come on, you're going to come do this administrative job. I think you can do it." Irma Johnson I brought out of a classroom and said, "You can do this." I could bring you about 7 or 8 people that I worked with and interned with and all that are all presidents or have been presidents of community colleges in Texas. So I think, the whole thing's helping people.